Tonight, Trump front and center. The former president speaks after a week of congressional hearings over his involvement in the January 6th attacks on the Capitol. Plus,
a lone suspect entered a small group church meeting and began shooting.
Another shooting, this time in an Alabama church. And a father's message.
Celebrate who you're called and designed to be as a father. And get off the bench and really get into the game.
Choosing life as the nation prepares to celebrate Dad's Day. All this and more coming up on Faith Nation. A 45 takes center stage. Good evening in Washington, D.C. I'm Jenna Browder. Tonight, all eyes are back on Donald Trump, the former president, making his first public comments after a week of congressional hearings focused on his involvement in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. President Trump was the keynote speaker at today's Faith and Freedom Coalition conference in Tennessee. And he wasted no time on the January 6th hearings. The CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka was following this for us today. Matt?
Well, Jenna, Donald Trump quickly pivoted to the January 6th committee after touting some of his accomplishments in office. This is the first time we have heard from Trump after yesterday's hearing, and the former president said the committee was rigged and was editing and doctoring video. Take a listen.
The committee is taking the testimony of witnesses who defended me for 8 hours, chopping it up and truncating sound bites to make it sound like what they said was absolutely terrible. But remember, it's also the people that weren't allowed to even testify that wanted to. A lot of people wanted to go and testify about what they saw and how crooked it was. Meanwhile, the committee refuses to play any of the tape of people saying the good things, the things that we want to hear. It's a one-way street.
Now, yesterday's January 6th committee focused on Vice President Mike Pence having to seek shelter when the mob attacked the Capitol and his conversations with Trump that morning. Witnesses said Trump called Pence a, quote, wimp and was heated during a January 6th phone call. Trump responded to that as well.
I never called Mike Pence a wimp. I never called him a wimp. Mike Pence had a chance to be great. He had a chance to be, frankly, historic. But just like Bill Barr and the rest of these weak people, Mike, and I say it sadly because I like him, but Mike did not have the courage to act.
A lot of Trump's comments were met with applause from the crowd. He said if he were elected again, he'd consider pardons for people arrested who were involved in the riot. The next January 6th committee hearing is scheduled for Tuesday at 1 p.m. Jenna?
All right, Capitol correspondent Matt Galka, thank you. Well, to the economy and growing concern on Wall Street that a recession is headed our way. This is Americans' struggle with soaring inflation and gas prices. Meanwhile, President Biden continuing to blame big oil and the war in Ukraine.
I'm using every lever available to me to bring down prices for the American people. And our nations are working together to stabilize. Ukraine has fueled the global energy crisis.
Amid the record-high gas prices, today Biden held a virtual meeting on energy and climate with leaders of other major economic powers. Biden warning he may invoke executive powers to increase output at refineries. Capacity is down by 3 million barrels a day since 2020. The American Petroleum Institute blames Biden's green energy push, saying his administration's misguided policy agenda, shifting away from domestic oil and natural gas, has compounded inflationary pressures. And there's new evidence of the toll of inflation taking on the economy. Retail spending unexpectedly dropping last week. And for more on this, let's bring in CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, interesting timing for a meeting on the climate. At a time when Americans are paying more than ever for gas at the pump. What do you make of it?
Yeah, well, look, it's all a dog and pony show. I mean, that's the reality of it. And look, enough with the Ukraine situation. Look, gas was already at, what, $3.30, $3.40 before Ukraine. So it was already on the way up. And even Steve Ratner today, one of President Obama's former economists, is on record saying the $2 trillion that the Biden administration spent at the beginning of his tenure was a waste of money and it caused inflation. So when you're losing Obama economists, it's not a good day in Biden land.
Yeah. David, let's talk about faith and freedom. President Trump speaking there today in Tennessee. He was animated. He was angry at times, especially talking about the January 6th hearings. What did you make of the president's speech and tone and just overall comments?
Yeah, well, there's a lot to kind of sift through. I've looked at a lot of it right now. Look, I don't even know where to begin other than they love him. And they're going to continue to love, or as he would say, the evangelicals, they love me. And that hasn't changed. Look at the crowd's reaction today. And he even brought up Mike Pence. And, you know, they like Mike Pence, but it seems like they love Trump even more. So I thought that was interesting. And look, on January 6th, he's never going to give that up, obviously, and he's going to continue on. And there's a lot of evangelicals that are with him on that, and that should not be discounted. So I think overall, you know, look, it was vintage Donald Trump. He was in front of a crowd that loves him, and, you know, that is good for the ego.
David, I thought it was interesting. You know, at the beginning, he was talking about values, faith, family, freedom, life, all things we've heard from him before. But this time he also mentioned science and women. That was something new.
Well, it's new because, you know, the culture is continuing to change and shift, and that's kind of like the new material, if you will. And I hate to call it material. It kind of downplays it, but that's the truth. And, you know, the liberals always say, follow the signs, follow the signs. Well, Donald Trump has picked up on that and realizes, like, wait, hold on. Follow the signs makes absolutely no sense as it relates to COVID, for sure. And then you just go into gender and everything going on with Leah Thomas. So he understands that he knows the trigger points. And he also understands that the trigger points can only be trigger points if there's truth behind them. And in front of this crowd, for sure, there's a lot of truth behind what he said today. Yeah.
You know, we saw the Trump effect again this week in the midterms, David. How likely, you know, do you think a former President Trump runs in 2024?
No, I think it's a no-brainer. He's going to run. You know, he even told me, what was a few months ago, that if the only way he wouldn't run if he got a call from the doctor, you know, a bad call, he said, from a doctor. So, no, look, he's going to run. And the only way he wouldn't run is if for some reason Republicans did not do well in the 2022 midterms. But hey, this just in, there's going to be a red wave. Have you heard? So, look, I think that's going to just embolden Trump even more. And let's also remember, Jenna, there's some polling out there that shows that Donald Trump is even more popular since January 6th. So this idea that liberals and Liz Cheney and the whole kit and caboodle on the far left think they can demonize him this way, I think they just make him stronger. And Biden, every day with his policies, makes Trump even stronger than that.
All right, David Brody, always good to see you on a Friday. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Jenna. You too.
All right, well, 3 people are dead and another injured after a gunman opened fire on a small group at a suburban Alabama church. Tonight, police have the suspect in custody, and the city is turning to prayer for healing. CBN's Brody Carter has more on that.
A lone suspect entered a small group church meeting and began shooting.
Just outside of Birmingham, Alabama, St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Vestavia Hills became the most recent target for a lone gunman.
3 people were shot. 2 people are deceased. 1 person is being treated for an unknown injury at a local hospital.
I'm so sad. I'm so prayerful for the families that was affected by this.
Linda Montana, a 20-year member at St. Stephen's, said she was in shock that her church is now a crime scene.
It's the lovingest, small, comfortable church. It's just a very community-oriented, very loving, very just reaching out to the community all the time.
Prayer circles formed in a nearby parking lot were the initial response of several people distressed by what happened.
I'm sad. This is something that you read about in the news. You see a lot of other places have experienced this, and it hurts that it's happened here.
Reverend Kelly Hudlow, missioner for clergy information for the Diocese of Alabama, says the community needs to be lifted up in healing through prayer and unity.
Police declined to identify the suspect or the victims, leaving out further details on the attack. Another press briefing is planned for Friday. Brody Carter, CBN News.
All right, thank you very much, Brody. Well, this weekend, America celebrates Juneteenth, the federal holiday commemorating the end of slavery. The country's 12th national holiday falls on June 19th each year, marking the emancipation of enslaved African Americans in the United States. Federal and government employees have Monday off to commemorate the day in 1865, when Union soldiers brought the long-delayed news of freedom to enslaved black people in Galveston, Texas. That was 2 months after the Confederacy had surrendered. And joining us now is John Perkins, author of Count It All Joy, The Ridiculous Paradox of Suffering. At 92 years old, the civil rights leader will be honored at Blessing of the Elders at the Museum of the Bible here in Washington, D.C. on Monday. John, welcome. It's an absolute honor to have you with us this evening.
Thank you so very much. It's wonderful for me to be with you here.
John, we want to talk to you about Juneteenth happening this weekend. You know, as one of the last original crusaders for the civil rights movement, what does Juneteenth mean to you?
Juneteenth is a great remembrance, even of the fact that they were slaves, but they forgot the Constitution. Do we hold this truth to be self-evident, that all human beings are created equal and is endowed by their Creator with certain rights? Chief among those are life. Life is the essence of human existence, and justice is to protect life.
You know, you have seen a lot, John, in your 92 years. You served under 6 presidents as an advisor on the topic of civil rights. In your view, John, has the U.S. made headway in achieving social and racial justice?
You'd think we would want to say, yeah, life matters, all life matters. And that would be the end of that. Life is what we got from God.
I do want to ask you about your book, John. I know it focuses on racial unity and living as an example of love and empathy through Christ. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the essence of Christianity is love, and it's put forth as the greatest of these, of all the great gifts. And they was talking about 10 or 12 of the greatest thing they knew about in that time. And he's compared it to love. And so love is a found fight. Love, for God so loved this humanity that he gave his only begotten son. So love is life. Love is in all, overall, and that's what Christianity represents in the incarnation of God in Jesus Christ. He loved it so much that he came himself to live among us. We crucified him, killed him. He came back to life. Now he wants to show us again how much he loves us, how much he still loves us. And he's reaching out for us to love him back. We need to learn how to respect the dignity that God called us to respect. We was created to reflect the light of love, that we've been loved by our holy God, and that we need to love each other.
That's a great word, and your book couldn't come at a better time. Once again, it's Count It All Joy. John Perkins, great to have you on with us. We thank you so much, and congratulations on the honor that you'll be receiving at the museum.
Thank you so much for having me on.
And coming up as we head into Father's Day weekend, this dad's special and powerful message. This weekend is Father's Day, and as the nation prepares to celebrate dads, one father is sharing the story of fighting for his son's life before he was even born. Charlene Aaron spoke with the former lead singer of the Christian band Sanctus Real about his journey and how he's encouraging other dads to fight too.
After Matt Hammett's son was diagnosed with a life-threatening heart disease in the womb, doctors suggested abortion. But Matt and his wife instead chose life, a decision he urges other men make in the fight for life and family. On September 9, 2010, little Bowen was born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. Over 30% of children born with the condition don't make it to their 5th birthday. His father felt helpless.
All we could do is just wait and pray and try to find our hope in the Lord.
5 days later, Bowen underwent open heart surgery.
That night of his first surgery, actually, he had some complications to the point where he coded, and they called us and told us that his heart had stopped beating. And I think I had spent so many months just hoping and believing as a father and giving everything that I had, praying for that miracle and that breakthrough, that honestly, it really jarred me to get that call in the middle of the night.
The medical crisis came at the height of Matt's career as a member of the Christian band Sanctus Real. It was a test of faith as he questioned God why this was happening to his family.
At the very time that Sanctus Real was reaching the peak of our career with the song Lead Me on the radio, it was our biggest song we'd ever had. It was kind of my moment to really process those questions as a father and figure out how, as a dad, I could fight for my son, even just through my prayers and, being there for him and for my wife.
Miraculously, Bowen survived. Fast forward to 2022. Now 11 and 3 open heart surgeries later, Bowen is inspiring the lives of many through his own music. Grateful for his son's recovery, Matt is active in the pro-life movement, serving as ambassador with Save the Storks, a group that offers hope and empowerment to those facing unplanned pregnancies.
I think of all the women or young men who sit across from a doctor who says, the best choice for you is to relinquish your fatherhood or relinquish your motherhood and move on with your life. But that's not empowerment. Empowerment is saying you can choose this life that God has given you. You can be a mother and you can be a father, the father that God has called you to be.
Oh, I can hear her saying, lead me.
Meanwhile, Sanctus Real's hit song Lead Me, about a man needing to spend more time with his family, led Matt to leave the group in 2016, a decision he says made him a better husband and father.
I could see all my good intentions as a father, and I could see that there were so many things I wanted to do as a dad, and I think that that's been the biggest growth in me, is learning that it's great to have good intentions, but they're worthless until they become actions.
A message he now shares with other dads.
Celebrate who you're called and designed to be as a father, and get off the bench and really get into the game. It's the greatest job that we'll ever get to do in our lives, next to following Christ and loving the woman that he's put in our lives.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Up next, a UN report examines the war between Israel and Hamas. Why some experts say it is biased. Turning overseas, experts are contesting a new report from the UN Human Rights Council on Israel. Some have condemned it as biased. The report examines the war between Israel and Hamas in May of last year, but some say it's part of a broader agenda against the Jewish state. Chris Mitchell brings us that story from Jerusalem.
After last year's 11-day war, the UN Human Rights Council established a commission to investigate the conflict, although its mandate went much broader.
It's unprecedented in terms of scope, in terms of geographic location, and most significantly in terms of timing. It's meant to look at the root causes of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict stemming from the war last May, but it is something that can go back to before 1948 when Israel was established and in perpetuity into the future as well.
The 18-page report delves into the overall Israeli-Palestinian conflict and concludes by placing the blame on Israel. It states that the findings and recommendations relevant to the underlying root causes were overwhelmingly directed towards Israel, and the report therefore reflects this. Even though Hamas and other terror groups fired more than 4,000 rockets into Israel, the report cites Hamas only 3 times and Israel 157. There is also no mention of Iran, which funded and armed Hamas during the war.
We love Hamas! We love Hamas!
At the Geneva UN headquarters, Israeli attorney Nitzana Darshan-Leitner led a demonstration against the report.
To come and expose the real face of the Human Rights Council of the UN, compare them to not other but terrorists. In the end of the day, both the UN Council and the terror organization have the same goal: to destroy the state of Israel. The UN is using diplomatic means, fake reports, blood libels, and the terror organization using military means, terror attacks and missiles against Israel.
Darshan-Leitner says the council has 10 agendas, and one is devoted just to Israel. Its commission of inquiry is unique among all other UN bodies, since it's mandated to release an annual report on the Jewish state.
They want to essentially employ what is a form of lawfare, using international law as a political means to delegitimize and attack the state of Israel.
The International Legal Forum, along with 25 other organizations, released a report singling out the head of the commission.
You know, Navi Pillay has already accused Israel of apartheid, of war crimes, of crimes against humanity, and this is the woman that is meant to be adjudicating our supposed guilt or innocence.
The report is expected to be voted on by the UN General Assembly to accept or reject the report during its fall session, and it may be sent to the International Criminal Court. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thank you, Chris. And still ahead, a hard-fought comeback. The Golden State Warriors take home the gold and more. Finally tonight, for the fourth time since 2015, the Golden State Warriors are NBA champions, defeating the Boston Celtics 103-90 in Game 6 of the NBA Finals. But for Steph Curry, the fourth ring wasn't the only win of the night. The guard was named MVP for the first time. Curry thanking God for the hard-fought win.
Man, I'm so proud of our group. I thank God every day that I get to play this game at the highest level with some amazing people.
And the newly minted MVP noted the team's rough patch over the last few seasons, landing them in the NBA lottery draft back in 2021. In its history, the team now has 7 NBA championship titles, and congratulations to them. That's going to do it for Faith Nation this evening. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there.